do it with my hands.
The pressure, he's in trouble. Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle. It's a Dolphin touchdown.
Throwing deep upfield on the near side. Man open. Touchdown! Looking deep. He's got a man. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's got it over the touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan.
Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We are back here for another one. We got a ton to talk about today. We got more of an update on the whole Fangio thing, so we'll talk about that. I actually want to give out my season awards. I've had these nice little fancy images ready since Thursday, so gonna give out my regular season awards today. And while I do, hey, in the comments, in the chat, leave who you would have winning the categories that I go over. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. So again, leave it in the comments after the video is posted, or leave it in the chat. And I'll remind y'all when we get to there. On top of that, we're going to go over a very, very good article by Barry Jackson talking to multiple neuro specialists, and they have confirmed that Tua Tagovailoa is not concussion prone. Listen, I'm going to talk about this until I'm blue in my face all the time. I'm a Penguins fan. Can't no Dolphin fan talk to me about concussions. This is the first time, really, we've been dealing with concussions on a serious level since what, Trent Green was a Dolphin? Really? If we actually go back, when was the last time we dealt with concussions as Dolphin fans on a serious level? What, Trent Green? You probably have to go all the way back to Trent Green to now where we're at with Tua. But remember, Trent Green was over multiple years. We're talking like documented like 8 concussions, meaning the guy probably had like 12, 16 really, really bad ones. Listen, Sidney Crosby, I go to all the time. I'm a Penguins fan. I watched the greatest hockey player in the world miss almost 2 seasons because of concussion issues, because he couldn't watch TV for almost a year. Had to sit in dark rooms. And this is I'm not exaggerating. These are facts. What happened? Got it sorted out by a chiropractor, nonetheless. Not even team doctors. A chiropractor figured it out. And guess what? He hasn't had concussion problems since. And he's won 2 championships since. My point is, you do not know with concussions. Tua could never have a concussion again. Literally, he could never have a concussion again. That is a fact. But it's also a fact that he could have multiple concussions again, because you don't know. It's head stuff is a crapshoot. It's a gray area, man. There is no, unless we're talking developed stages of CTE, like serious developed stages of CTE. And even then, you still got to get in there and get inside they still have to actually get into the brain to confirm CTE, right? They have to do it after you're passed away. They have to cut open your brain, and then they can figure it out. You do not know. Tua could never, ever have just like Sidney Crosby has not had head issues since then. Sidney Crosby has had no serious issues since then. None. And he missed almost 2 years of hockey. And it's been, what? It's been, it's been a decade. It's been a decade since that all went down with Sid. So, I mean, yeah, 9 years. It's been a decade. And if anyone, go back and I'll tell you exactly what hit to watch. And go tell me what looked worse. Tua falling back and hitting his head or what Sid took, okay? David Steckel, Winter Classic, hit on Sidney Crosby. Go put in those keywords on YouTube and you will see. Sidney Crosby wasn't even looking. David Steckel comes, hits him with the shoulder, just done. And Sidney had over 60 points in like 41 games that year. He was crushing it. Cheap blindside hit. Missed almost 2 years of hockey. And guess what? Been back. He's won multiple championships. And, I mean, now he's 36 going on 37. Right? He's going to be, he's 35 going on 36. Right? He's going to be 36 in August. So the guy's now, he's past 35. Right? So, and again, correlation to Tua. It happened to him in his mid-20s. You just never know. Or it could end up being an Eric Lindros. I'll stick with hockey. Any hockey fan knows Eric Lindros. Eric Lindros was one of the biggest players in the league in terms of height, size. The guy was huge. Massive. Great goal scorer. But what happened? Took a blindside shot from Scott Stevens. Well, blindside, he wasn't looking. He was watching his pass. Took a shot from Scott Stevens in open ice. Was never the same ever again. And that guy was way bigger than Sidney Crosby. Way big. Eric Lindros next to Sidney Crosby. Eric Lindros looks more like he's built for a 20-year career in hockey. Game's different now. Sidney got tree trunk legs and unbelievable balance and center of gravity. But I'm just saying, Eric Lindros looked like he was built to play 20 years of hockey. And he took, boom, one, never recovered. Never recovered. You breathe on him and he, boom, done. While Sidney Crosby, a guy who's much smaller than Eric Lindros, missed almost 2 years, but he hasn't had issues since for almost a decade. And he's won 2 championships. Because you don't know. It's such a gray area. So that's why I will listen to doctors and neuro specialists before I listen to people on Twitter, before I listen to people on YouTube, before I listen to people on Facebook, before I listen to people on Instagram. Because as a sports fan, as a diehard sports fan of a team, because listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. Family, friends, Dolphins and Penguins. And Dolphins and Penguins are on the same line, all right? Been there. I've seen it. You don't know. You got to let it play out. Knight, Rodgers, 2 concussions in 2010, 1 in October, 2nd in December. Man, hey, it's the same Kenny Pickett this year. We've talked about this over and over again. T. Higgins this year. T. Higgins had 2 in 1 game. I've actually put up, if you go back months ago, remember I put up the T. Higgins timeline. So, it happens. It literally, as much as you're a full contact sport, it happens. It happens. You just got to limit it from happening again. And I hear people, you could just tell how uneducated and how ignorant people are when it comes to sports and just how much of a casual. I see people mock on different platforms, not just like on, Facebook or Twitter, like on every platform. You see people mock when someone says, Tua needs to learn how to fall. I'll keep saying this, and I know I got people in the chat who will back me up, whether they're in jiu-jitsu, whether they're skateboarders, and my analogy is always skateboarding. Listen, there is an art to falling. There is an art. And if you actually look at, Tua's concussion, right? He's trying to avoid falling on his throwing arm, and then he turns and he braces himself. Sorry, and he doesn't brace himself. So he had the wherewithal to, okay, I'm going to fall, I'm going to land on my throwing arm. I don't want to do that. So he turns his body and he lands and he smacks. All he had to do was turn, brace, and then there you go. Okay? It's literally an art form. I keep telling people this. And again, go watch skateboarders. All you got to do is watch skateboarding. There is an art to falling. Jiu-jitsu, all these different, look at, you go from jiu-jitsu skateboarding. Look how vast and different those are. And even they will tell you there is an art form to falling. Yes, there is, especially as you get older, right? And you get bigger. I mean, there's an art form to bracing a 215, 220-pound body hitting the ground. It's not just like, oh, well, let's fall and see what happens and hope it goes my way. No. There is an art form to that, and anyone will tell you that. So, he's just got to get better. He's got to protect himself. That's all. And so, it'll happen. I'm sure it'll be fine. Listen, I'll tell you right now, if we start dealing with concussion issues next year, yes, I'm going to throw up the red flag. Sure. But I'm not going to sit here and say, write the kid off. Because, again, all I got to say is Sidney Crosby. Okay? People were saying this guy was going to retire. And he had a legitimate case. Almost 2 years of missing hockey. Of missing the sport he was paid for. This guy missed how many games he missed this year? 5? 6 if we include the wild card? So, and let's be honest, and I said this before and I'll tell you all again, and I want you to listen to me right now. If it was the 1990s, if it was the 2000s, if it was the 2010s, you bet your ass Tua would have been out there against the Patriots and against the Jets or against the Jets. People don't realize him being under the spotlight, him being clickbait, him always being the center attraction on all these different shows, that was detrimental to us. I'm going to tell you this right now, and I've told you guys this before. He was telling people privately, if we make the playoffs, I'm coming back. And if he's saying that, remember, these reports, Jay Glazer is the most plugged in person, and he was telling y'all this before we even kicked off against the Patriots. If he was already telling people that, you know what that tells me? He knew he was good. He knew he was good. But because of optics, because of the NFL, I guarantee you, and we will never know till Tua's out of here, or like a book comes out or something. But I'm going to tell you this right now. They halted this kid from coming back. And I'm not sitting here to say that's a negative or a positive. I'm just telling y'all, use your minds a little bit here. It's clear as day he was ready to come back. Listen to what Tyreek said post-game against the Jets. You listen to how players were talking. You heard Monday McDaniel saying he was game planning for all 3 quarterbacks. You had reports coming out that internally the Dolphins were hoping he was going to play the wild card game. I'm telling you, it's because it's not because after they won the Jets, he said, okay, I'm ready to come back. He had been telling them, I'm good to go. Let's go. And then you listen to what McDaniel says. McDaniel said, Tua's learning to listen to the doctors, right? Because he's telling the doctors, yo, put me in there. I'm good. Let's go. I'm ready to go win some football games for this team. I'm telling you right now, if this kid, it's the exact answer of why Kenny Pickett was allowed to play with no issues with 2 concussions, why T. Higgins could play with 2 concussions in 1 game and 3 documented all year. It's why they could do this, because they weren't under the spotlight. If Tua was not under the spotlight, I'm telling y'all he would have been back. Just from the things I know, the things I've heard, and then the things we've seen publicly, come on, man. And hey, whether they did the right thing for Tua or not, that's up for the doctors and Tua to decide. That's not up for me to decide. So I'm not here to say whether that was right or wrong for them to hold him out when he clearly wanted to come back. That is up for the doctors and Tua to decide. I am not qualified to speak on that. I'm just qualified to tell all y'all what the facts are that I know. But I don't know that stuff. Let me see. Do I have a medical degree on this wall? No, I don't have a medical degree on the wall or on that bookshelf. So it ain't me going to talk about that, whether that was the right or wrong decision. So, let's just worry about next year, because that's all we can do right now. Let's be real. And what's crazy is I'm going to tell you this, and man, it's just crazy to think that if Tua played last week, we'd probably be playing a game in 28 minutes. I'd be getting ready to go live for us to play Kansas City. That one hurts, man. That one hurts. That's why they got to bring in a contingency plan. They got to bring in, if they are moving forward with Tua for the 2023 season, they need to bring in a contingency plan that you're at the level where you need to bring in someone that can guarantee you can at least win some games. And we thought Brissett and Bridgewater were a guarantee of at least maybe if he's out for 4 or 5 games, you could at least win 2, maybe 3 of those. Keep your neck afloat. But when we're only winning, in 2021, we won 1 game without him, and it took Tyrod Taylor's worst performance against the Dolphins. This year, we won 1 game without him, and it took the defense standing on their head and Jason Sanders finding the clutch gene again. So, we got to find – listen, you got to be prepared that if he's going to miss 5 or 6 games this season, you have a contingency in place that – listen, I want someone where I can – I'm going to be honest with you. I want someone in place that, Tua got to look over his shoulder. You got to know that, hey, man, I can afford to miss games for any tick-tacky bullshit, right? Unless it's something serious that he can't miss time. We need to win ball games. Like I said this last offseason, we got a 3-year window. 1 year is done. So that remains 2 years now. So that's where I'm at. Move forward with Tua, because if Tua stays healthy, this offense is going to be historic. But if he cannot stay healthy, you got to have something in building that can win you football games. Fix the O-line and linebacker group while you're at it too, huh? All right. Let's get into it. We'll start off with the latest on the Boyer situation, on Vic Fangio, and then we'll slide into that Barry Jackson article, all right? So starting off with, if you didn't see, Mike McDaniel actually did make a statement regarding Josh Boyer, and this was it. The Dolphins announced today they have parted ways with defensive coordinator Josh Boyer, and he said, "I'm grateful for Josh's contributions this year and throughout his tenure with the Dolphins." Mike McDaniel said the defense made strides through the season, so coming to this decision was not easy. But ultimately, I feel it is in the best long-term interest of the Miami Dolphins and the continued growth of our players and our team. And then it talks about the other people who were released. Listen, first of all, not a very long statement by any stretch of the imagination. They didn't even post it to Twitter. Oh, man. I mean, they did lovey-dovey in Texas, but at least they gave him a long tweet, huh? I talked a little bit about this on my 3 Takes Thursday that I'm doing every week on Patreon, patreon.com/Phinside The NFL. You can see it below. It's an exclusive Patreon video that'll be coming every week. And I talked a little bit about this Josh Boyer thing and why it happened. And, man, you got guys with different philosophies, right? You got McDaniel talking about Edge is his favorite player, defensive lineman, he drafted defensive lineman every year. When you got Boyer who wants to build from the back up. It was always going to happen. I warned all y'all last offseason that this is in McDaniel's favor. If he builds the offense and this defense regresses, he's going to turn around and say, hey, I did my job. I want to bring in my guys, and look at what's happened. It literally followed that to the T. So, it is what it is. I mean, I saw this coming last offseason. Unless we were lights out, and we were that defense we saw over the last 8 weeks of the 2021-2022 season, that was the only chance Boyer had, and we weren't. Even over those last 3 games, we weren't. He got exposed that Flores and Alexander, in fact, over the last 8 games, they were clearly calling the plays, man. He got exposed that this defense, the way it's built, does not tick without Flores overseeing it in-house. All right, next up, update on Vic Fangio. Josina Anderson, about 3 hours ago, I'm told Vic Fangio is a target expected to receive strong consideration for the Dolphins defensive coordinator vacancy per league source. it remains to be seen what Fangio's response will be. So we had Marcel Louis-Jacques coming out with sourced information. Josina Anderson came out with this tweet, which was then Dov Kleiman, who's an NFL reporter, then tweeted out basically referencing Josina Anderson's tweet. The reason why it's saying it remains to be seen what Fangio's response will be is because the Eagles are still alive in the playoffs. He cannot come out and say, I'm taking, like, that will not happen till I think the Eagles are out. When the Eagles are out is when the Fangio move will happen. But now that this has gone from Marcel Louis-Jacques to Josina Anderson, I'm telling you right now, this is... I am 95% sure we are going to get Vic Fangio. Because, I mean, this is the only other two options I see happening. DeMeco Ryans leaves, and Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers try to swoo him back to that organization where he was on Harbaugh's staff. But I don't know if he'll go back without Harbaugh. And then right now, he is a defensive consultant for the Eagles. If their defensive coordinator, I believe his name is Gannon, gets a new job, then maybe they try to bring Fangio down. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Shout out to EM Dolphin fan in the chat, and EM Dolphin fan can back me up on this. I have known privately since last offseason that McDaniel's number one favored target for this position was Vic Fangio. That's why we've been talking about it on this channel since last offseason. Because this was the guy he wanted. I've known this. But what did I tell all of y'all? Greer Garfinkel said, hey, we want to give Boyer and Crossman one more year. And I see people asking, why is Crossman still around? I'm going to tell you why Crossman's still around. Because this Fangio thing is real. This connection is real. The interviews, remember what came out a day, about 24, 48 hours. About 24, 48 hours before we got rid of Boyer, right? Remember when it was too early, right? When McDaniel told y'all it was too early and dodged the question. I told y'all, oh yeah, Boyer done when we watched the end of the year presser, right? When it came out about 24, 48 hours before Boyer's firing, that Fangio had these interviews in place, the Dolphins didn't hesitate. They're like, all right, pack this man's bag, call the Uber, get him out of Dodge. And Sean Payton is probably going to Denver. Fangio ain't going back to Denver. Right? So that domino will fall and it's game on. And that might be what Fangio was waiting on, is the Payton domino to fall, that to be done, that to be finished. And once that's, it's game on. And I do think if Sean Payton goes to Denver, I'm 99% sure that Fangio is going to be in Miami. I think our only real threat, if you want my opinion, our only real threat other than Payton is if the Eagles DC gets a head coaching job somewhere, which I don't think he will. And then boom. And then, he comes from a defensive consultant. But I don't know, man. I know there's been mutual interest between Fangio and McDaniel. Fangio has been intrigued about coaching with Mike McDaniel since last offseason. I know that for a fact. I know there was interest on Fangio's side. I know McDaniel, that's who we wanted last offseason. And now the stars are aligning as I look up at the sky. I think our only real threat, again, is Eagles defensive coordinator dips. They throw him the bag. Or Payton goes somewhere else and takes him. But if he goes to Denver, Fangio ain't going to Denver. So let's go. And lock this man up. Make him the highest paid defensive coordinator. Make him comfortable in Miami, because Fangio might not want to. He's older now, right? He might not want to coach again. He might just want to settle in as a genius defensive coordinator, get paid, and live it out in the sunshine of South Florida. So that's where the Vic Fangio stuff lies at right now. Continuing on, by the way, go Jags. Continuing on. Here, let's get into this. What concussion experts discuss Tua's medical outlook, what he should do if concussed again. It's the first in a 4-part series on the Dolphins quarterback situation. The Dolphins doctors and at least one physician involved with the players' union told team management that Tua Tagovailoa is not more likely to sustain another concussion than anybody else. That's a big reason why the Dolphins remain committed to Tagovailoa as their starter for 2023, even after a season in which he missed 5.5 games because of concussions. But what do other concussion experts believe? Two contacted by the Miami Herald in the past week says there's not enough evidence to indicate that Tagovailoa is prone to concussions, even though he had 2 and possibly 3 this past season, and there's no reason for him to consider retirement. So there you go. You got people connected with the team. You got independent neuro physicians being contacted here. You also got one involved with the players' union, and they're telling you this. Man, I don't want to hear nothing. I don't want to hear nothing from no one. All right? Unless you are going to physically take a picture holding a piece of paper you've written the date on, along with your real medical degree that we can all back check and fact check actually exists. You know what? In fact, I want some of your schoolwork in the picture as well, so we can fact check who the freaking professors were too. Unless you're about to bring that, I don't want to hear nothing from no one, period, with regards to the concussion stuff. Now, if you want to say availability in general, okay, that's, yay. Because I will be the first one to agree. You know, it's been one thing after another with Tua. It's not one specific thing. It's been one thing and then one thing and then one thing. So if you want to talk about availability and generalize it and blanket that it's been one thing after another, you got no argument from me. But if you're going to come out here and act like you're a concussion doctor and a neurosurgeon or a neuroscientist, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that. Anyways. But one of them cautioned that if Tagovailoa next season sustains concussions from hits that would not typically cause concussions in another, that would be a red flag and warrant at least the consideration of retirement, which I would definitely agree with. If we're seeing this guy get breathed on and he's concussed, then yeah, we got an issue. Neither of the experts contacted for telephone issues has examined Tagovailoa's medical records, but both of the experts, Robert Cantu and Chris Nowinski, said it's fine for Tagovailoa to resume playing provided his symptoms disappear. Multiple Dolphins players said recently Tagovailoa has told him that he feels fine. If he had a headache for a year and wasn't able to exercise, that's when you start having the conversation about whether it's good. And that's where Sidney Crosby was at. See? What they're describing right there in that first line, if he had a headache for a year and wasn't able to exercise, that's where Sidney Crosby was at. Sitting in dark rooms, not able to be in well-lit rooms, not able to watch TV because the light hurts you and gives you a headache. That's when you got to start having that is when you have to start having the conversations. That's the stuff that should scare you. But if the recovery is in the scope of weeks and not many months, then there's no need to step permanently away from the game. The odds a doctor would say you should never return to the field are slim, Nowinski said. Cantu, one of the founders of the Concussion Legacy Foundation and medical director and director of clinical research at the Cantu Concussion Center at Emerson Hospital in Concord, Massachusetts, said there's no medical need for Tagovailoa to discontinue playing. Is it as safe to return as it was before his third concussion? Yes, said Cantu, who strongly believes Tagovailoa had 3 concussions this past season based on his wobbliness after the Bills' Week 3 hit that was not diagnosed as a concussion. It's a violent game. He's at risk for head injury and at risk for CTE, which is a later life issue. Is he at great risk if he plays further? Likely, but I would never say he should not come back and play next year. Both doctors said it was wise for Tagovailoa not to play again this past season, even though the Dolphins never formally ruled him out for the season. The more concussions you have in a short period of time, the greater risk you have of a longer recovery, and there's also a risk of developing health disorders, things could get in the way of his career, Nowitzki said. His brain needs and deserves months to recover. The best course is to rest until next season. Even though we return players within a week or two of concussions, the brain doesn't recover at least until a month. Giving Tua 6 months to recover hopefully gets him back to the previous baseline when he didn't have concussions. Cantu wrote a return to play medical guidebook in 1986 that was used by many college football programs. When we did that, we indicated that someone who had 3 concussions in any one given season should be sat for the rest of the season and another 3 months to boot once they are asymptomatic, Cantu said. With 3 concussions, I would support him being sat down for the season, even though there isn't evidence-based science to definitely state that isn't. See, so look at, even a guy who has a concussion center, does all this clinical research, even he's saying that's his opinion. With 3 concussions, I would support him being sat down for the season, even though there isn't evidence-based science to definitely state that is necessary to do. Right? Even a guy who's well more educated and versed on the subject than anyone we're going to talk to on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You want to meet them on Tinder because that's how you roll? I don't know. But there you go. All right? It's even with the most educated guys in this field, guys and gals, it is a educated guess. Is Tagovailoa more likely to have another concussion next season because he had 2 or 3 this season? Again, there is no statistically proven answer to that question, Cantu said. There's no medical evidence that suggests people who have 1 concussion are more likely to have another within a short period of time. Sorry, there is medical evidence, right? So that you can have a concussion in a short period of time after having another. But there is no evidence, according to Cantu, that someone who has had multiple concussions in a few months is more likely to have another one nearly a year later. If Tagovailoa sustains another concussion next season, should he be held out longer than a person who stays his first concussion? If that happened, Cantu said he would hold Tagovailoa out a bit longer than players who sustained their first concussions, but not appreciably longer. So there you go. There's medical evidence that's saying, okay, if, you can get a concussion within a short period of time if you just had one. But there's no evidence that you can, if you've had multiple concussions in a few months, that you are more likely to have one nearly a year later, which is by the time he hits the field, right? And again, he's saying, sure, I'd hold him out a bit longer than someone who's never had a concussion before, but it wouldn't be that much longer, even if he gets a concussion next year. The concussion stack starts at 0 for Tagovailoa next December, according to Cantu, presuming he doesn't have one before then. So there you go. He also says that concussion starts at 0. If you put a great deal of months between concussions, you're more likely to go back to what your baseline is before that stretch of concussions. If he has a 4th overall concussion in September, that will still be his first next season. I would be a little more conservative next season. I wouldn't be 4 or 5 weeks conservative. There's not the science to say that you should be 2 or 3 weeks more conservative. There is not any scientific basis to holding him out several weeks if he has a mild concussion next season. But common sense would say rest him a little longer than most in that scenario. But if you hold him out an inordinate amount of time after a concussion next fall, it would not be based on science. Nowitzki said if Tagovailoa sustains a concussion next season, I would probably not consider returning him within 1 week, but that he would return without needing to sit out many weeks. So even Nowitzki says, you wouldn't have to sit out many, many weeks. Nowitzki added that concussions tend toward getting more severe with longer recoveries as they add up. But that's not the case for everybody, and there are examples of people who appeared to have career-ending concussions who returned without problems. Sidney Crosby. Tua doesn't have chronic symptoms, so that's a good sign. There's no sign that the next one will sideline him for 6 months. Cantu said a scenario that could cause Tagovailoa to consider retirement would be this. If blows that do not normally produce symptoms now are producing concussion symptoms, if the intensity is considerably less and not expected to produce symptoms and are still producing symptoms, that's the person at real risk, Cantu said. That would be a bad situation and mean your career is over. Would the hit that produced a concussion against Green Bay qualify as such a hit? Cantu did not believe it would because Tagovailoa's head hit the turf on that play. It was more moderate than mild, he said. Cantu said there's no concussion magic number that exists after which a player should definitely retire. I worry more about what seems to be a mild blow that produces concussion symptoms, especially if those symptoms last, Cantu said. Concussions are talked about as if they are the same, and they're not. Concussions with symptoms for 30 minutes or an hour or a day are not the same brain injury as someone who has symptoms for 3 months or 6 months. Which, guys, that's what Tua's had. Tua's had symptoms for hours or days. He has not had symptoms for 3 months, right? And he's telling you right there, that's a different ball game. So that's why all you people with your Twitter and your YouTube doctors, that's why you don't know what you're talking about. I keep telling all y'all. And you've already said them, you've already seen them say in this that it affects people differently, which is what I keep stressing to you guys about this stuff. Is there concern that Tagovailoa is prone to concussions? Nowinski said that would be unfair to say. Cantu said, you are not going to know the answer until he resumes play next summer. Certain people are more prone to be concussed than others. The reason for some might be neck structure. Some could be about brain factors that we don't know. And when he talked about neck structure right there, that was Sidney Crosby's issue. Sidney Crosby had to go to a chiropractor, and he had certain discs displaced in his neck that got fixed. And his neck got fixed. That was his issue, was neck displacement. And then it got fixed, never had an issue again. So that's why when he said neck structure, I get what Cantu's saying, because that was Sidney Crosby's issue, and it kept Sidney out for almost 2 years. Nowinski said, and was critical of the Dolphins' handling of Tagovailoa in late September. So that's why when Nowinski is saying all this stuff about Tagovailoa, remember how critical he was, because I remember how critical he was of the Dolphins. So he's coming from a very unbiased place. Remember, he's a former wrestler, right? He was there when all the Chris Benoit stuff happened. He went and was talking to people about the Chris Benoit stuff when all that happened, right? And Chris Benoit, when they cut his brain open, they found that he had CTE and he had the brain of like an 80-something-year-old. So even though 2 doctors said he did not sustain a concussion in Week 3 against Buffalo, Nowinski believes he suffered a head injury that day and that he should have never played 5 days later against Cincinnati. That's the issue, right? That's where what hit, you're susceptible to concussions if you've had one in a short period of time. And that's what we all think happened in that situation, right? When he sustained a concussion on a violent tackle that caused his head to bounce off the turf. Tagovailoa missed 2 games before returning to the field against Pittsburgh. I would not call this bad luck, Nowinski said. I would call this unfortunate medical management. He was never given a chance to recover from the first concussion. Anybody who got hit like that, like the hit he took 4 days after that against Cincinnati, is going to be vulnerable for a long time. That's why I suggested to take the rest of the season off after the Green Bay concussion. But calling him concussion prone is not fair. An NFL and union investigation absolved the Dolphins of any wrongdoing in the handling of the Buffalo incident. Tagovailoa was ruled to have a back injury at the time. The Dolphins and Tagovailoa are expected to give serious thought to Tagovailoa using a helmet with more protection than the one he had been wearing. What's interesting is the helmet is one of the higher-rated helmets, Coach Mike McDaniel said. It's in the top 2 or 3, I think, from the NFL rating for helmet safety. I think with every player, that's a choice they make. They all like the comfort, feel, and whatever, but I think those will be the discussions they will all have. They'll have with all of us, equipment, doctors, and staff. But it's a very safe helmet, and how the NFL has rated helmets. Steelers' Kenny Pickett wore a helmet with more padding than Tagovailoa's after sustaining a concussion this past season. But Nowinski said he has seen no evidence to indicate those type of helmets or Q collars significantly reduce the risk of concussion. There is going to be no technological solution to prevent this, he said. I think back to Carolina Panthers All-Pro linebacker Luke Kuechly wearing a Q collar that when he got the concussion that ended his career. It is a verifiable fact that a Q collar does not reduce concussion risk. There is no strong evidence that specific helmets would be better for him. The most logical thing to do would be to reduce future concussion risk, so adjust how he plays to avoid unnecessary blows to the head. McDaniel said we have had thoughts on how to help him slide without putting his head at great risk. Cantu said wearing a helmet with more padding slightly decreases the acceleration force that the brain will sustain within that area, but whether it reduces concussions is unknown. NFL insider Jonathan Jones noted that all 3 of Tagovailoa's hits have been to the back of the head, the occipital area, and the league is developing a quarterback quarterback-specific helmet with extra padding in the back, since that's where the majority of quarterback concussions do occur. But Nowinski said more studies are needed on that helmet to determine their effectiveness, and added that there's always a risk of head injuries with bigger or heavier helmets. So the Dolphins move ahead with Tagovailoa based on the belief that this season's concussion were not an alarming harbinger. Talking with the doctors and consultants and with everybody we dealt with, we fully expect him to be back next year, 100% ready, Chris Greer said. So, right, like, takeaways from there, obviously. If you have a concussion, you're more susceptible to another concussion in a short period of time. All right? If that's why they say, take time off. So, if you can create the longer distance you can create between taking hits, obviously, the less symptoms you're going to see. And then on top of that, another big takeaway there is we need to be worried about Tua and concussions if, like I've been telling all of y'all, if you can't watch TV, you're stuck in a dark room, bright lights give you headaches. If you're seeing symptoms for like 3 to 6 months, we got to be worried. If you're seeing symptoms for like a couple hours or a day or two, be worried and take time off, but that's not the career-threatening, prone to serious concussions. We got to have this discussion type of stuff, right? It's when the symptoms are lasting for months is when you got to be worried that this guy's got to hang the cleats up. That's when you got to be actually, scared. So I just want to just show you, because I know a lot of people have wondered this, right? And I'm going to show you guys this. See, I know it's I'll zoom in here so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about here. All right. So I want to bring this up just so you can see. So this is the helmets in the NFL right here. And these are, so you see the Vicus 028 matrix, that's considered, these are the laboratory testing results, right? And I'm going to show you. So if you look at this list right here, and right now, Tua Tagovailoa, he wears the Speed Flex Diamond on this list. All right? And when you look at the Speed Flex Diamond, the Speed Flex Diamond is the 6th down the list. He wears the 6th safest helmet on this list, according to laboratory testing. He's number 6. The Riddle Speed Flex Diamond, that is what Tua wears. So there's 5 helmets that are considered technically safer than what Tua's wearing right now on that list. Just because I know people have asked, hey, what does he wear? What are the safest, et cetera, right? So I wanted to show y'all guys that. All right. You know what I got for y'all. Let's do my 2023 Phinside Awards. All right? And I want y'all, as we go through these categories, I want you to put your winner in the comment, in this live chat, or if you're watching after, I want you to put in the comments, who would you pick as the winners for these categories, all right? I want to hear your thoughts. So let's start it off. Da-da-da-da! All right? Let's go into the 2023 Phinside Awards. You already know what time it is. We do it big over here, man. Nice little image over here, huh? Nice little image. All right. Let's start off with the first award. And the winner of the 2023 Phinside Award for most underrated Miami Dolphin, Verone McKinley the third. I think this man did an admirable job stepping in when Brandon Jones went down this year. I mean, you look at what Verone McKinley did this year, and, in 197 coverage snaps, all right, this man was targeted 3 times, allowed 1 reception for a 33.3 reception rate. Had an interception. Remember, he's only targeted 3 times in coverage, and he had 1 interception out of those 3 targets. Only allowed 7 yards per reception when he was targeted. I mean, I could talk about his NFL passer rating at being at 2.8 when he was targeted, but again, he was only targeted 3 times. So, you look at him right here too. Verone McKinley. Did you know Verone McKinley had the highest coverage grade for any Miami Dolphin this season? 72.7. 72.7. I think Verone McKinley, I loved him coming out of Oregon. I loved him as a day 3 option. We got him as a UDFA. Love this player. Love what he does. Love what he's doing. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Verone McKinley, especially if we get a Fangio and we got to use those 2 high safety shells, that's a guy that in that rotation I think can make a difference, man. I really do. So, big fan of Verone McKinley. I think he was our most underrated this season. Sorry. I got to give him his props, man. I got to give Verone McKinley his props because, let's be honest. He ain't going to give you, right? He ain't going to give you Brandon Jones. We know he ain't going to give you Brandon Jones. So, but he'll give you a lot more in coverage than Brandon Jones is going to give you. So, shout out to Verone McKinley and what he did this year. I got him as my most underrated. All right. So, the second award and my winner of the most improved player for 2023. Is there even a doubt? Tua Tagovailoa is the most improved player for 2023. He might be the most improved player in the NFL. Okay? Tua Tagovailoa lights out this year when he did strap up and get out there. I mean, we're talking about a man who finished 12th in yards, 8th in touchdown passes, 12th in interceptions, only having 8, 3rd in QBR, number 1 in passer rating, and he did all of that while not playing a full season, while missing a fair amount of time, really. I mean, tough one. Tough one. Missing 5-6 games this season. And, and he still finished high in all those major categories. He was in the MVP discussion at one point this season. So, only played 13 games. And we played 17 in a playoff game. So, and he still finished. Imagine if he would have been able to finish that season out, what he could have done. But clearly, Tua Tagovailoa was the most improved player this year. Might be league-wide. All right? So, shout out to Tua. Let's take that next step. Let's stay healthy next year because next year might be historic. Who's my rookie of the year? Oh, it ain't no doubt. It's that kid from Texas A&M Commerce, Kader Kohou. Kader was an absolute stud this year. I mean, this is just an obvious pick. Need we say more about Darth Kader? Unbelievable talent. Unbelievable find by Josh Boyer. Got to give him his props in finding and developing corners. You look at Kader Kohou, Nick Needham. Man, you got to give the props to Kader Kohou. Absolute stud this year when we needed him to be the most. Kept Noah inactive. When you look at Kader this year, all right, just an absolute stud. Just an absolute stud. 67 tackles this year. Targeted 106 times, allowed 69 receptions, allowed an 80.7 passer rating when he was targeted. At 8 pass breakups, a touchdown, only 1 touchdown, had an interception, only allowed 9.3 yards per reception. I mean, absolute big season just for example, Xavier Howard is allowing 15.3 yards per reception. But Kader Kohu only allowing 9.3 yards per reception. Absolute stud this year. Stepped up when we needed him to the most. Shout out to Kader Kohu. Special teams player of the year. I mean, is there even a doubt? Thomas Morstead. We know he retired. But, I mean, the guy was just lights out this year punting the football. Man, I'd bring him back. If he was willing to come back for another year, why not? He was actually absolutely reliable. Fantastic. Thomas Morstead. He is my special teams MVP, hands down. Shout out to Thomas Morstead. I wish you nothing but the best on your future endeavors in terms of wherever retirement may take you if you do not come back. But my God, you were absolutely lights out this year. Had a 72.9 punting grade from PFF. And, you know, his yards per attempt was about 47.1. He racked up almost 3,000 punting total yards on 60 attempts this year. And averaged about 4.34 seconds in hang time. Man, he was just he was good. He was good this year, man. He was good this year. Shout out to Thomas Morstead for being the special teams MVP. Now, the defensive MVP for the Miami Dolphins. For me this season, has to be Christian Wilkins. Just has to be. I think he was one of, listen, you could make the argument for Jalen Phillips. And everyone knows I'm all about Jalen Phillips' descent. I think he's going to become, I predicted him to enter the top 10 pass rushers this season. And I predicted him next year to enter the top 5. So, and he's ascending. But let's talk about this man right now. Christian Wilkins. Man, he was unbelievable. An 85.1 grade, defensive grade. He was just unreal this year. For an interior guy, 22 hurries from Christian Wilkins. We've wanted him to improve his pass rush. He gave you 3.5 sacks this year. Just so impressed by him. Now, I know he was 1 sack behind what he did last year, but he's just been so phenomenal. And to watch him take the growth he has, man, it's just been unbelievable. A total of 30 pressures this year from Christian Wilkins. And that right there is the second highest of career. He had 31 last year. But Christian Wilkins just was so lights out this year. He's just so impactful. And, I just can't say enough good things. He had the most run stops of any defensive lineman in the NFL this year at 45. Number 2 on that list, Zach Sealer at 34. So he was blowing away interior guys. Unbelievable. He also had the most tackles of all interior defensive linemen this year. 56. Number 2, Grover Stewart at 45. He was an absolute stud as a run defender this year. So Christian Wilkins, big reason why we had one of the top run defenses in the NFL when it was all said and done. And obviously, you already know where I'm going. Who's the offensive MVP this year? Tyreek Hill, baby. I mean, what more can you say about what Tyreek Hill did this year? What more can you say? The guy was absolutely unbelievable. Everything we wanted and more. Now he had a little bit of the dropsy issues, but we're talking about a guy who put up 1,710 yards and 7 touchdowns on 119 receptions this year. 290 yards away from 2,000 yards. I mean, wow. In year one, with Tua missing 5 games in the regular season. Are you serious? That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And, I mean, you know, what did he also do? This man blew away Mark Clayton's 1984 record of 1,389 yards. Single season receiving leading record for the Dolphins. It's now 17-10. What's crazy is Jalen Waddle was only about 34 yards away from breaking it as well. Tyreek was number 1, and Waddle's season was number 3 in the all-time receiving list. Tyreek Hill literally rewrote the Dolphins' receiving record book. Tyreek Hill all day, baby. All day. Unbelievable year. You got to give him his props. Played a fantastic year, man. Unbelievable stuff. And guys, I know the playoff game is about to get going for all of y'all. Just a few little news and notes updates for everyone, in case you didn't know. In case you didn't see, the wildcard game between the Bills and Dolphins last weekend peaked at nearly 40 million viewers. That is ridiculous. The game overall averaged 30.5 million viewers, which made it the most watched wildcard game in 9 years. Unbelievable. Wow. That is unreal. Shout out. Hey, man, we ready for prime time. Shout out to Knight. He said Waddle has more yards this year than Reek last year. Waddle was lights out, baby. Waddle was unreal. Waddle was just unreal. Eric Studesville, he, remember, Darrell Bevell turned down. Remember, Eric Bevell turned down Washington last week. So what did Eric Studesville do? He came in and swooped and said, all right, I'll interview with them. So the Washington Commanders will be interviewing Eric Studesville on Monday. So there you go. Eric Studesville in line for potentially a new job. Been here since the Gase era, pointed out by one of the great members of our chat. And then finally, guys, before I get out of here, I did want to go over this with you guys. And it was just it was a 6-pack of notes from Barry Sanders earlier this week. And Jalen Waddle displayed impressive growth in his second season, leading the league in yards per reception, finishing 7th in receiving yards and 27th in receptions. But the way his season ended left him expecting more of himself. His playoff game in Buffalo included a drop on a well-thrown deep pass from Skylar Thompson early in the game and the inability to catch another pass that was well defended. He had 3 catches on 7 targets for 44 yards. Does he wish he had some of those play back? Yeah, definitely. How would he assess this season? I feel like it was okay. He said, it was okay for me personally. I definitely didn't end the season how I wanted to. I can take step forwards in so many aspects of my game for sure, which is scary. This man put up 1,358 yards, put up the 3rd most yards in his second season, put up the 3rd most yards in a single season by a Dolphins receiver. And he knows, like we all know, he's got room to grow. That is scary. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips likely will be the Dolphins starting outside linebacker tandem for years to come. Notice Ogba wasn't mentioned. They shared a moment hours after Sunday's loss in Buffalo. I know me and JP talked last night, Chubb said. We understand that we have to hone our craft, make sure we're leading the pack, and make sure we're doing everything we can do to help this organization take the next step. What can Chubb-Phillips combination become? It can be real scary, man, Chubb said. Phillips had 44 pressures in 9 games with Chubb, 33 pressures in 9 games without him. as Travis Wingfield noted. Chubb, who battled through hand and ankle injuries in the final 2 games, said the way the season ended with numerous injuries on the team was a little unfortunate. All the things that this team went through this year and the position we were in, we still had the opportunity to make noise and came up just short. But there's a lot of things we can build off. The offense, how they exploded. Everybody saw their growth. The defense, when I came, everybody felt the added bolt of energy. We started playing a little better as a unit. Though Chubb had 2.5 sacks and just 13 tackles in 8 games in Miami, he forced a Josh Allen fumble on a sack in the playoff game. When Bradley came in, our analytics ran steady for us, and we moved into the top 10 or top 8 or 6 of our 12 metrics we evaluate for defense, Chris Greer said. Just his impact coming in, and that's the run and the pass. In the exit meetings Monday, some of the defensive guys were talking about how cool he was. What a good guy, work ethic, toughness, leadership. Brian Baldinger tweeted about Phillips. He was the best defensive player on the field in the epic playoff game. If Phillips was a stock, I would be loading up. Players were excited to hear that the organization remains committed to Tua as a starter. You got to be excited, Waddle said. Tua is a great player, a special player, so having him out there is always good. Mike Gesicki, speaking to South Florida reporters for the likely final time on Monday, looked back at his time. He said, been here for 5 years, loved every second, the good and the bad. So if my journey brings me back here next year and I'm back here in April, I'll be here with a smile on my face. That seems unlikely. He will assuredly find another team that will be able to pay him more and utilize his receiving skills. Becoming a free agent will be interesting for sure, he said. I don't really know how it works. I'm going to meet with my agent at some point in the near future. I'm going to go upstairs and talk to Chris and Mike and gauge their expectations and what they're thinking moving forward to see if I keep cleaning out this locker or not. Gesicki and tight end Durham Smythe, our close friends, discussed the possibility that Sunday was their final game together. We talked about it, Gesicki said. I got his jersey back here. That's my guy. Love playing with him, growing these last 5 years with him. It was awesome. He's got only 1 year left on his deal, so if I go somewhere next year, he's coming right behind me. We'll see how it all plays out, but if that was it, we went out having fun. Christian Wilkins, due to make $10.8 million next season on his 5th-year option, appears to be in line to get a new contract this offseason. Talks on a multi-year deal are expected, but he shrugged off that possibility during a media session on Monday. I'm not paying attention to it, he said. I'm not in control of that. That's up to the powers that be, my agent, whoever else. Wilkins became the NFL's first defensive lineman this century to record 98 tackles in the season. It was a rough for me my rookie year. I was just working tirelessly every day because I love this football stuff, he said. I love my teammates. I love Miami. I love this organization. The Dolphins signed 7 members of the practice squad to future contracts, giving them rights to those players for the upcoming offseason beyond. They are Josiah Bronson, Lester Cotton, Tino Ellis, Cameron Good, Braylon Sanders, Keon Smith, and Jalen Twyman. Good, the Dolphins' 7th-round pick last year, flashed in training camp, spent the year on the practice squad, and was never elevated for a game. He said the team told him that they viewed him as a developmental season for him. Sanders was elevated the maximum 3 times by Miami and caught 2 passes for 17 yards with a drop. The Dolphins like his upside. Keon Smith was elevated the maximum 3 times as insurance for the offensive line after that sustained multiple injuries. He didn't appear in a game. He went undrafted out of Fayetteville State in May 2021. Cotton, who went undrafted out of Alabama, made his 2nd NFL start in the playoff game against Buffalo, filling in for Eichenberg. His previous start came for the Raiders. Bronson spent the 2022 season on Miami's practice squad and was elevated once, playing in Miami's Week 17 game at New England. And Ellis has been on the practice squad since October 10th. He had an interception in 9 games for USFL's Michigan Panthers last spring. And Twyman, a 6th-round pick, joined Miami's practice squad on October 10th. He became the first interior lineman to lead the Pittsburgh Panthers in sacks since Aaron Donald had 11 in 2013. So there you go. You are all filled up. You are all filled in heading into this week. What the deal with me is we are going to be live. It's going to be business as usual this week. I'm going to be live either Monday or Tuesday, and we'll be laying out what the schedule for this week will be, as well as I have a show on that day. We will be having the postseason panel coming very soon. We'll go over all of our preseason reviews. I'll be bringing back all the guys. So we got a lot of thing in the works right now. And hey, man, playoff football is happening this weekend. Even without us, there's still some great games. I hope all of y'all can make a little money off your parlays while getting some great games in. I know what the one's happening right now, and I wanted to have this show done before it started. But listen, guys, it's Saturday. It's the first weekend without football. It worked out that I came through on a Saturday, gave y'all some Dolphins content on the weekend. Fill that itch, and don't worry. When something happens with defensive coordinator, as more updates happen, I will be going live and filling all y'all in. You already know what time it is, man. You already know my opinion. Man. Whew. Dude. Yeah, they call our fan base delusional because people like you call this guy trash when he had the number 2 passing offense in the NFL. We literally had the number 2 passing offense in the NFL under Tua Tagovailoa. You want to talk about Tua Tagovailoa's availability? That's all fine. But when you call Tua trash and his ability trash, you just tell me you don't know football. That's all you're telling me. Because, again, name me any time since Dan Marino was a quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, we had the number 2 passing offense in the NFL. Go ahead and name me. Go ahead and name me. And don't say it was because of Tyreek and Jalen Waddle because why didn't Skyler and Bridgewater make the most of them? Why against Cleveland why were there multiple games this year where Tua had over 300 yards and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle didn't even break 100 yards each? Why didn't Tyreek Hill put up 1,700 yards with Mahomes? So, give me a break. Give me a break. We had the number 2 passing offense this season. Number 2, but name the last time we had the number 2 passing offense. And my friend, you are the one that's speaking like a minion, and we all know where you're a minion from. And clearly you come from the side that doesn't know how to watch film and doesn't know football from their ass, from their face. So I don't know what to tell you. It's not my fault you don't know football. Number 2 passing offense in the NFL when Tua was out there. Name me when we've done that since Dan Marino played. I'll wait. Because you can't. Because it never happened. Yet, we start dropping out of that number 2 spot when Skyler and Bridgewater take over. Why is that? Yeah, okay. Exactly. Anyways, I'm going to get out of here. We got delusional people that don't know football, and it's always the best just to make them look like idiots. So, I'm going to be back Monday or Tuesday. I'll probably be back Monday, so be on the lookout for me. And we'll have the latest update on the defensive coordinator search and everything else. And look out for that postseason roundtable. We'll try and get that going this week, too. Got a lot of content coming for all y'all. You already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. I will see all of y'all on the next one.